Putin greets disembarking Russian nationals at airport. The return of numerous Russian citizens who had been released as part of a prisoner exchange with Western nations was personally welcomed by Russian President Vladimir Putin, according to Russia's TASS news agency on Friday. A crimson carpet and a guard of honor from the presidential regiment were waiting for the liberated Russians as a special plane touched down at Moscow's Vnukovo II airport, according to the report. Putin hugged or shook hands with every passenger at the airport. The recently released Vadim Krasakov was one of the people he welcomed. Aside from Putin, other Russian officials who received the returning Russians included Defense Minister Andrei Belousov and Director of the Federal Security Service Alexander Bortnikov. Shortly after the Russians' release, Putin spoke at the airport to thank them for their service and welcome them home. Meeting with President Vladimir Putin in Moscow on Wednesday, the penultimate leg of his visit of 4 nations, Indonesia's President-elect Prabowo Subianto encouraged Russia to promote the development of nuclear energy in the Southeast Asian nation. "We are open for increased Russian investment in our economy," stated Prabowo, who is also the defense minister, during his meeting with Putin at the Kremlin on Wednesday. Regarding the potential for cooperation in the realm of nuclear energy, he mentioned that talks had taken place with your institutions and Rosatom, the Russian state atomic energy business. He mentioned that both large reactors and smaller modular reactors had been considered. Russian Embassy in Jakarta. Translation of Putin's speech: Russia is ready to carry out investment projects in energy, transportation, and infrastructure. Nevertheless, he did not address the nuclear request directly. As part of its efforts to reduce its carbon footprint, Indonesia is planning to accelerate the development of nuclear power. There is simply a modest research reactor there at the moment. There is no operational nuclear plant. Nuclear power will no longer be the last choice, according to an official at the National Energy Council, which is changing its energy development mix earlier this year. On Wednesday, Prabowo made his 4th trip to Moscow in the previous 4 years. This visit was particularly noteworthy because it was just before his inauguration as the new president of Indonesia, succeeding Joko Widodo, on October 20. He made it clear that he hoped to strengthen ties with the country upon formally becoming president of the Republic of Indonesia. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022 saw grain prices soaring, Putin pledged to boost supplies of agricultural items to the Southeast Asian nation. Wheat, a staple food in Indonesian cuisine, especially bread and noodles, is a major export for both nations. Noting that a nation with roughly 300 million people is of tremendous interest to Russia, the Russian leader also mentioned that he anticipated a free trade deal between the Eurasian Economic Union and Indonesia shortly. Earlier in the day, Prabowo met with Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov, during which he requested Russian technologies to boost Indonesia's defense industry. After visiting France, Serbia, and Turkey, Prabowo concluded his 4-country tour in Russia. Military procurement and defense cooperation were topics of discussion during his meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris. Dassault Aviation, a French aircraft company, has sold 42 Rafale fighter jets to Indonesia. He met with numerous high-ranking French executives for the opening ceremony of the Summer Olympics. During their meeting on Monday in Belgrade, he and Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić spoke about defense and economic cooperation. On the second day of his visit to Ankara, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan received him, and the topics of discussion revolved around defense cooperation once again. Turkish Aerospace sold 12 surveillance and reconnaissance drones to Indonesia for $300 million last year. The two nations are aiming to enhance collaboration between their military sectors and are working together on tank development. Amid rising tensions in the Indo-Pacific region, Indonesia's defense minister, Prabowo, has traveled extensively abroad to upgrade the country's armed forces. The COVID-19 pandemic led to cuts to defense spending, and his procurement plans frequently ran counter to the interests of the finance ministry. It is believed that Prabowo will prioritize the defense sector more heavily in his presidency.